It feels like you're drowning, only that there is no water.
It's like a voice in your head, and this voice in your head will take the good and the bad. It will turn every single good thing you do bad, and then it will inflate every bad thing you've ever done times 1,000.
Depression is not weakness. It is an illness that people are battling, and it should not be considered as weakness.
Many times men are difficult to open up.
Peace is not necessarily the absence of war. We tend to ignore the fact that we have to be at peace with our inner selves in order to be at peace with the world.
One of the natural things about men is to be on top of things and to be in charge of everything else that is going on.
Boys are specifically told, no, boys don't cry, men don't cry. So the minute the boy child is feeling something and they want to express their emotion through tears, somebody tells them, no, that's not the way that it is done.
We are already weak as a society when we tell our men that it's a sign of weakness when they show emotions. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 6 adults will experience depression at some point in their lives. Women are more likely than men to experience depression, and with that, it is often that men are overlooked, hence suffer in silence. We embarked on a journey to uncover the truth about depression in men, the stigma, the causes, the medical, and the religious aspects. So what exactly is depression? We sat down with a clinical psychologist to get a clearer picture.
My name is Charlene Denus. I am a practicing counseling psychologist with IHC Phoenix. Depression, also known as a major depressive disorder, is a mood disorder characterized by feelings of sadness, helplessness. It really affects how you feel negatively, in such a sense that you're forever feeling low, and you don't want to do anything, don't want to talk to anybody, and it's characterized by experiencing these symptoms for more than 2 weeks. So before even we come in to diagnose depression, usually we have to make sure that the medical aspect is captured, so that your feelings or whatever you're exhibiting is not brought on by a medical condition and is actually something mental. So one of the causes is biochemistry. Depression is a mood disorder, and our moods are generally governed by certain chemicals in the brain. So you'd find if you have a chemical imbalance in the brain, or certain chemicals are not balancing the way they're supposed to balance in the brain, it could contribute to feelings of sadness and low mood, hence depression. The next one is genetics. If there's somebody in your household, somebody in your bloodline who has suffered from depression or is currently dealing with depression, then you're genetically predisposed to depression. It's personality. People with low self-esteem,
Depression occurs differently with everyone. It changes how one feels, thinks, and functions. So we reached out to 2 brave young men who then gave us an account of their story.
I keep freelance filmmaker, talent management, and aspiring wildlife documentarist. Well, my depression was a slow, gradual process. I think it took at least 24 years of my life for me to get there. When you think about all the mitigating factors that led to me being depressed, it started way off as a child, I think. From early childhood, rough childhood, absentee parents, traumatic episodes that went through when I was a child. Gradually, I think it started off as by first of all taking my self-esteem. I think once you lose your self-esteem, then your confidence goes. When your confidence goes, you kind of now start being stressed because you really can't do anything without confidence and self-esteem. It's for you to now actually understand that you're in a depressive state. You kind of have to have triggers, something that triggers you to get to that point where you feel like, okay, now I'm at full-blown depression. For me, that was my grandfather's death, I think, because to me, he was the only one person in this entire world who loved me unconditionally. Yeah, and that really means a lot for someone, you know. If you have somebody in your corner who, whether you're good or bad, he's just there to cheer you up. So that was my grandfather for me. And when he died, that's when I truly felt alone. And I'm not talking about that loneliness of not having people around you. Loneliness in the sense that it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're surrounded by friends, but you somehow feel alone. I don't know if I'm making sense, but that is what I felt, you know. And then after his burial, I went for like 6 months where, 4 to 6 months where no member of my family kept checking in on me. And I was in school at that time, far away from home. My sister wasn't even around. So I think that period after his death, handling his death, being all alone, school stressing me out, trying to make a living stressing me out, all those factors combining together blew up. And then one day at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm finding myself standing outside my door, afraid of walking in, because I knew if I walked into that house, the only way I would come out of that house is in a coffin, per se. So that's when I knew now I was fully depressed. It wasn't even about stress anymore. It was now depression. I was dealing with something much more serious.
I remember it was 2016, and 2016 was just like a really bad year for me personally. Like generally 2015 should have been a bad year, but it was a good year. It was an okay year for me. Even though I lost my grandfather, I was just like, it's okay, life moves on. And then 2016 came and it was like, you thought you missed. Here's the train. Tip, hit me. So, what triggered my depression? Lots of things. My relationship with my mom wasn't that great at the time, and I really didn't know how to fix it. So that's one. Plus two, there was something that was going on at church, and I was harboring a grudge. And the thing about that grudge, it had built up until it was just like an immeasurable portion. So I had a grudge with the church, and I couldn't tell anyone at church because I didn't know anyone at church. So that made me feel invisible, which added onto the grudge, and it was just a vicious cycle, that church thing. And number three, I was in university now. In university, like I had, let's call it a plan. I had some place I wanted to be, and it wasn't even like in masomo, because I'm good at that. I just thought like university was like a chance, like to start over again socially, because like in high school, I didn't really understand what it was like to be popular there. So university, I thought like I could start over, maybe talk to girls and all that, and that didn't pan out. And I was like, why isn't it panning out? I'm trying to do everything I can and it's still not panning out. Why? So yeah, that's all added to the depression.
A lot, if not most men, like to think of themselves as being in control of their emotions. So when they feel hopeless or overwhelmed, they often deny or try to cover it up.
One of the natural things about men is to be on top of things and to be in charge of everything else that is going on. And then most of the men are not prepared to handle the responsibilities and some of the tasks that the society expects of them. And so, or maybe things do not go their way. And that can push a man to strange feelings about themselves. One, considering themselves as failure, considering themselves as people who are inadequate. are not able to do what is expected of them. And so that can push someone to that corner of depression. And again, our ego, we do not want to talk about our failures, despite actually failing every other time.
The shame and stigma associated with depression in men in society can sometimes prevent those in illness to admit that they are ill.
Given today's society, there's a lot of pressure that's been put on men. The whole masculinity aspect, you know. There's a face that men have to wear to show masculinity. They're not allowed to be vulnerable, that they should not show weakness. They cannot cry. They're always supposed to be these very robotic, you know, I know it all, I'm strong enough, nothing affects me, I can get through this, it's just a small problem.
Most men are less likely to admit that they are feeling fragile or vulnerable, so they are less likely to seek medical help.
My name is Jackie Wasike Sihanya. I am a life and leadership coach. I am credentialed by the International Coach Federation. The main difference between coaching and counseling is that counseling is what we call a medical model, where the therapist is working with the client or the patient to help them overcome trauma from the past, so psychological or emotional trauma, and the psychologist or the therapist is an expert. In coaching, on the other hand, it is about starting from the present and going into the future. The fact that coaching helps people to resolve issues means that it does have something to do with mental health, except that in this case, the issue that the coach is helping the client or the coachee to resolve tends to be a temporary issue, a roadblock or a temporary barrier that the person is just for one reason or another not able to overcome. But we also know that if people consistently do not overcome such barriers, it can lead to more serious mental issues that might even become clinical. So if a person finds that they are consistently not able to meet their goals, it can affect their self-esteem, for example, and as a result of that, it could go into other mental issues. If you look at culturally, the way boys and girls are raised, if you just look at our environment, you can see that girls and boys are raised differently. So boys are specifically told, no, boys don't cry, men don't cry. So the minute the boy child is feeling something and they want to express their emotion through tears, somebody tells them, no, that's not the way that it is done. This, I believe, has an impact on the way that they grow up to learn to express themselves, especially when they are feeling pain. On the contrary, if a girl cries, I mean, nobody tells them to stop crying. It is considered to be perfectly normal. And so for that reason, I think women are perhaps, and I speak about this country, women are perhaps more comfortable about seeking support when it comes to mental health issues.
And sadly enough, by the time a man comes in for therapy, it's usually too late. Because they'll not come here willingly, they'll have to have been forced. So they'll come here kicking, silently kicking and screaming and just protesting the whole thing. I don't want to be here, I don't understand why I need to be here. Why? Because society has told you you're not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be strong enough to be able to deal with all your problems by yourself.
But I also want to share something else that I have observed in my practice. I get a lot of people who come to me because they want to speak with a coach. But when I start interacting with them, I realize that what they need is actually a counselor. And again, this is not scientifically proven, but my assessment is that people find it easier to say that they are consulting a coach than a counselor, because there is a certain stigma, I would say, that is associated with mental health. So if you say that you have certain issues and therefore you're getting therapy, maybe people will react to you differently and in such a way that makes you feel uncomfortable versus if you say that you're working with a coach. I think speaking about working with a coach is probably seen as more gisty. Therefore, there is no stigmatization around coaching as there is around seeking therapy for mental health issues.
However, mental health experts urge young men to turn to a helping hand as part of the solution.
Conversation conversations with a coach, as with a therapist, are 100% confidential. So one should never be afraid that their issues are going to be spoken about by the professional that they are speaking to. But generally, I would say that problems are part of life, and everybody faces certain difficulties from one moment to another. And I think rather than waiting for these problems to be so big that it becomes very difficult to overcome them, it is a good habit to seek help. Even if you just start by seeking help from people who are close to you. You know, the Kiswahili saying, kuuliza si ujinga, is something that would be a very good pointer to help people decide whether or not they want to seek help. And I think that asking for help is definitely a much better road to take than having to undergo perhaps serious rehabilitation because you didn't ask for help early on. And there's nothing to be ashamed of. Even the most confident looking people, you might be surprised to know that they have so many problems and they are possibly working with somebody to help them overcome them.
Religious groups across the country have also created avenues for men living with depression to seek help.
Yeah, my name is Muhammad Sheikh Ishaq, Da'wah Officer, Jamia Mosque, Nairobi. Many times men are difficult to open up. You'll find that a person, especially a man, suffering and going through a lot of psychological problems, depression, difficulties, but difficult to know that this person has this and that and he needs some help. But generally, there are talks which are normally given. There are different sermons given generally to tackle such things because there are common things among the congregation, and perhaps many men will not come forward to showcase their cases. And apart from that, we have our sheikhs here, our imams, which normally counsel those who show the interest of needing that particular counseling. So we have our sheikhs, our deputy imam, who normally does the particular counseling, that any person with a problem and he wants to be listened to and to be helped in one way or the other, then the space is there and the opportunity is there. Otherwise, we have classes to teach general religion, which also covers that how best a person will achieve that particular happiness on this world, as well as how to avoid the depression, which brings a lot of problems in our world today.
Church coming up with programs whereby they like to include men. Now we hear of men's fellowship, we hear of, but sometimes if you want to really have a great catch of men, you put some food in those meetings. And so like in our church, men's prayer breakfast works a lot. Proverbs talks about as iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens a man. And so from all the Christian aspects, when the Lord was saying in Matthew 11:28 that come to me, all ye that are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. The Lord provided a room whereby people could share their burdens and find rest for their hearts.
As people around our men, stop putting too much pressure on the men. They're human at the end of the day. They can fail without it being the end of the world, and it's for us to help them get back up again, you know, because at the end of the day, as a society, we are responsible for each other. For us to thrive, we all have to thrive. And if you put it across into one gender and make it in such a way that their main responsibility is to look after the rest of us, to support the rest of us without getting any support themselves, then what is our expectation? You know, we're going to have men with depression. We're going to have men who are going to attempt suicide. We're going to have men who are going to collapse and be tired and decide that they don't want to fight anymore. So change the narrative. Change your expectation of men. Change your expectation of what you expect or what you basically class as a male role or a real man. Recognize this person as a human and with emotions, a human with emotions. Just as you are allowed to experience sadness, so is he.
Time is right to tell the male kind that being a man does not really make you a man, that in their tears, their fears, and their being in need of a shoulder to cry on does not scratch away the muscle in their masculinity. The 7th.